Have you ever wondered who Avatar Kyoshi is? This is something that recently crossed my mind. What exactly do we know about Avatar Kyoshi other than she was a previous avatar from the Earth Kingdom and the originator of the Kyoshi warriors? We even know that she lived for 200 years. That's right, 2 whole centuries she was Avatar, before dying and passing on her mantle of Avatar to Roku. But there has to be more information out there since she is one of the prominent past lives of Aang that we constantly see. So knowing that, what better way than to find the answer than to scour the internet? I was able to gather a lot of information about Avatar Kyoshi that I never knew before, and let me tell you, her history and backstory is pretty tragic. So we're gonna dive right into this and start off with the early life of Avatar Kyoshi, which is when she was born, in some unknown part of the Earth Kingdom, in the year 312 BG. Now, if you didn't know, BG stands for Before Fire Nation Genocide, and AG stands for After the Fire Nation Genocide. That's how they keep track of the years. For BG, the numbers go down, and AG, it goes up, just for a reference. Now, her parents were Jessa and Hark, both members living in the Earth Kingdom. However, Jessa was actually a renegade air nomad, while Hark was from a family of poor actors. Now, somehow these two met, fell in love, and formed a criminal organization called the Flying Opera Company. Now, another thing to know, at this time in the Earth Kingdom, it was very unstable, as was a lot of the world in general. The Earth Kingdom was unstable due to some uprisings and criminal organizations scattered everywhere through the nation. One of the main contributions to the country's destabilization was a recent uprising called the Yellowneck Uprising. Now, her parents, who were also criminals themselves, thought it would be best for them to lay low and decided to take their baby on a trip for the next 5 to 6 years, doing the best they can to make a life for themselves. And on their journeys, they stumbled across the little village called Yokoyo Port. Now, Yokoyo Port on the whole is a very poor village of farmers. And when they stumbled upon this village, they decided to leave her in the care of a random Earth Kingdom villager. Now, obviously they traded and made a deal with this villager, giving them some of the belongings they had as a trade to take care of their child. Now, as the parents were departing, the mother chose to leave a fan with young Kyoshi as a remembrance of her parents. Now, this fan is going to be the iconic fan that we get to learn later on in the series as Kyoshi's ideal weapon. Now, from the moment the parents leave, the villagers immediately start to turn their backs on Kyoshi, especially the one that was intended to take care of her. They saw her as an outcast and didn't want any single thing to do with her, which kind of sucks for Kyoshi, because now she has nobody in her life to take care of her. And for the next couple years leading up to her teenage life, she basically lived on the streets and endured hardships. She would eventually start to blame her parents for this misfortune, as they were the ones who left her in the care of the villager. And not for one moment did she ever blame the villagers, which was quite interesting of her personality. Due to all these hardships, she eventually grew very tall and strong, as well as distrusting of every single person she would ever meet. Now, fast forwarding a little bit to the year 305 BG. Now, apparently in the Earth Kingdom around this time, they have been searching for the new Avatar, who is said to be of Earth Kingdom heritage, for the last 7 years, unsuccessfully. And the 2 people in charge of this endeavor, Jianzhu and Kelsang, finally make it to this village where Kyoshi is staying. By the way, these 2 bending masters were actually best friends with the previous Avatar, Kuruk of the Water Nation. Now, at this point in Kyoshi's life, she gets to witness something very interesting, as she's spying on an event held by these 2 bending masters who are entrusted with finding the next Avatar. Now, what they're doing is rounding up all the kids they would expect to be the age the new Avatar should be and giving them the Avatar test, which is basically allowing them to choose specific toys from previous Avatars. If they choose the right toys, then it is obvious that they are the Avatar, and they're going to literally do everything in their power to train this being to fulfill their Avatar duties. So Avatar Kyoshi is spying on this event, and this is where Kelsang sees this little girl who is Kyoshi and invites her in to take the test. Kelsang explains to Kyoshi what this test is, and if she is chosen to be the Avatar, she will in turn have her life changed, as she is going to gain riches and rewards. However, Kyoshi, very distrustful of people, does not believe him and runs off. And this is where Kelsang's partner, Jianzhu, says to his friend, "Hey, this girl is way too old. There is no way she could be the Avatar." Little does he know he's actually very wrong, but we're going to continue on the story here. Now, this is where something astonishing happens that I actually did not know happened in the Avatar universe, or could happen. These 2 bending masters falsely identify a kid named Yoon as the Avatar. Now, I don't know how this guy passed this test, but maybe he just by luck chose the right items. So Yoon is obviously taken from his family, and what these 2 masters decide to do is they get the funding as they announce it to the world that this kid is the Avatar, and they immediately start to build a mansion near the village. Now the mansion is going to be a place for all his bending masters as well as his servants to live in, because obviously the new avatar needs to be trained and he needs somewhere very lavish to be and stay. Now that the two masters, Kelsang and Jianzhu, are staying in the village, Kelsang actually sees Kyoshi once again, rumbling around the village and noticing there's a trend, how the villagers treat her. So Kelsang, with his kind heart, decides to take it upon himself to take care of Kyoshi, as he doesn't really believe she should be treated this way. And over time, Kyoshi starts to warm up to him and consider him her adoptive father. Now, as she's living with Kelsang, whenever Kelsang is in town, he takes the best care of Kyoshi. However, there are moments where he needs to leave, and when he does this, he leaves money for villagers to take care of her. After the first time he comes back, he realized Kyoshi was skinnier than ever, meaning that the villagers did not take care of her. Instead of getting angry and taking it out on the villagers, he chose a different option. He was never going to leave Kyoshi alone ever again, and he also convinced his partner, Jianzhu, to get her a position to work at the Avatar's mansion. This way she will always have a place to stay and be taken care of, as well as learning how to take care of herself. So they do this, and she basically starts off as a little servant, but eventually works her way up to being the personal servant girl of Yoon himself. Now, as Kyoshi is working in the mansion, she becomes loved by a lot of the staff. She makes specific friends with Yoon himself, as well as Yoon's firebending master and teacher, Rangi. Now, Rangi's personality is she is very aggressive and upfront. She doesn't really have a lot of friends, but she is also very demanding. But due to the relationship she forms with these people, she's very kind-hearted towards Kyoshi herself. Now, as the story progresses, we also learn that Yoon and Kyoshi seem to have this form of attraction for one another. There are some moments where they're nearly kissed, but nothing ever happened, as they thought this relationship would be impossible. So instead, they remain very close friends. Now, Kelsang also takes note that Kyoshi is able to earthbend, and he even tries his best to get Kyoshi to take on a master so she could become a proper earthbender. Kyoshi, again, says she has no use for earthbending, as that has nothing to do with her job, so he again has to let it go. Now we reach the year 296 BG. Kyoshi's adoptive father starts to get suspicious, thinking to himself that Kyoshi might actually be the Avatar. He confronts her about this, and she just writes it off as something that could never be possible, and the two end up dropping this notion. Now we also get to learn that Yoon and Kyoshi are actually going on a lot of missions together, because as we know, the Avatar is the person to be the diplomat between the nations. And since some of these missions are dangerous, Kelsang decides to gift Kyoshi with something very important, the iconic armor that she will forever wear. So we now know how she got her armor, and we know the fan itself is from her mother, which is really cool that she keeps these things that are so close to her heart. Now, with that being said, the group is sent on one specific diplomatic mission to negotiate peace with some pirates. These pirates are called the Fifth Nation. This, however, turned out to be a trap, and things went south quickly. And on the verge of capture and death, Kyoshi actually activates the Avatar state for the first time ever, saving Yoon, the group, and herself in the process. When news broke of this event, Kelsang began to immediately say his thoughts publicly, which caused the identity of the Avatar to come into question. However, this is where the other master, Jianzhu, takes a deep dark turn in the story. He decides to kidnap Kyoshi and Yoon and seeks out an evil spirit named Father Glowworm, asking this Glowworm which one of these two are the Avatar. Now in this case, the spirit immediately says Kyoshi is the Avatar. And in this moment, Jianzhu grabs Kyoshi, dips out, and leaves Yoon to suffer an unbearable fate by the spirit. Now we also see Kelsang show up to the scene as he is alerted of the news. He comes to save Kyoshi and ask his friend Jianzhu, what are you doing? And before he could get any words off, Jianzhu immediately unalives Kelsang, which causes Kyoshi to be overburdened by her emotions as they begin to overflow and take her over. And that is when she activates the Avatar state for the second time, giving her the power to escape Jianzhu, fly back to the Avatar mansion, tell Rangi. It's also nice to note that Rangi, being her friend, doesn't question it, fully trusts her, and they both literally fly away on a flying bison, which is owned by Kelsang, called Peng Peng. Eventually, the two start to come up with a plan to lay low, and their brilliant idea is to join a criminal organization known as the Flying Opera Company, which Kyoshi's parents actually started back in the day. Kyoshi also realizes that one of the main members of this group, called Lao Gi, was actually a famous assassin. Now she also over time starts to befriend 3 other people in the group, Kirima, a waterbender, and Wang and Li, who also turn out to be earthbenders themselves. Now as she befriends these people, Laogi continues to tell her that he has a way of immortality. He knows knowledge of how you can become immortal, and he slowly starts to share this information with her. Now this could also be the reason that she's able to live to 200 years old. Now Kyoshi and her friend Rangi could only run for so long, and this is where Wanzu finally catches up to her as he sends a Shirshu, which is that weird creature we see in the Avatar series with the tongue that comes out, you know, that weird dog looking thing with the tongue, or is that a badger? But you know what I mean. Now he sends one of that after her and they're able to find her, and this is where a battle ensues. And due to this battle, Kyoshi has no choice but to reveal her identity. Thinking her friends would want nothing to do with her or probably capture her in turn for a reward, Kyoshi tries to run away, but her friends hold her back, saying they're not going to do that to her. They're not going to betray her. And this is one of the best moments in Kyoshi's story, as she finally takes note that she is the Avatar, and she uses her friends to help her train. She just does not have an airbending teacher yet. It would have been pretty cool if Kelsang would have been, but he's kind of unalive right now, so that's not going to happen. And Laoge just says he's going to continue on with them and continue to share his knowledge about immortality with her specifically. Now Kyoshi and her group are eventually sent on a mission to rescue prisoners from a dungeon from the corrupt governor known as Ti Sing Hung. Now remember earlier in the video when I said the Earth Kingdom was unstable, and one of the biggest reasons was due to an uprising by the Yellownecks? Now the reason I brought up that earlier part in the story was because of this next thing, which we come to find out one of the prisoners was actually the leader of that rebel group that caused the uprising in the first place. And with him being loose, what do you think he's going to do? He's immediately going to start to build up power and try to overtake the entire Earth Kingdom. And the leader, by the way, his name was Zhu Ping. And Zhu Ping is a very powerful lightning bender. So Kyoshi, immediately learning of this, had to challenge him because she needed this not to happen. She eventually wins by entering the Avatar state, and she unalives Zhu Ping. Now after the battle, Kyoshi herself is very injured and is needed to be nursed back by her friends to get back into good health. And this is where Wanzu swoops in. A battle ensues and he somehow escapes, kidnapping Rangi and unaliving Leek. Now Kyoshi, overwhelmed with anger, musters the strength and searches out for Wanzu. After some searching, Kyoshi finds out where he's staying, confronts him, and doesn't even ask to release her friends. She wants revenge. Wanzu asks one more time for her to become his pupil, so he can train her in the way of being the greatest Avatar. However, Kyoshi, being as stubborn as ever, as well as knowing Wanzu killed her adoptive father, strikes out and a battle goes on between the two. Now Wanzu himself is no pushover, and he's putting up a pretty good fight. However, a decisive moment occurs when Yoon, the fake Avatar, somehow appears out of the blue. Kyoshi is shocked and stunned by this, and Yoon takes this opportunity to unalive Wanzu, and then he just disappears. Kyoshi is flabbergasted as what she just witnessed, because like her, you as well as I probably thought Yoon was gone. Yoon was unalived by that creature. Now after all these events, Kyoshi thinks to herself she has no choice but to fully accept her fate, and she flies to the Southern Air Temple, where she finally publicly announces she is the Avatar. Nobody can question this, as she has all the things to back this up. She can enter the Avatar state, as well as wield the other elements. So with that being said, the world now accepts her as the Avatar, and before leaving the Southern Air Temple, she is given some news. Wanzu actually left all his land and wealth to her, which is pretty funny. It seems like Wanzu was one of those characters who intended to do the right thing, but did it in some really shady and unnecessary ways. Now for Avatar Kyoshi, she's finding that being the Avatar is one of the hardest things in life, as she's being forced to be a diplomat between nations and kingdoms in general. And what she's learning frustrates her incredibly, that most of the governors she meets or kings she's intended to talk to are all corrupt, and they're not doing anything for the people other than filling their pockets, and she is losing her mind with it. And whenever Kyoshi is sent on a mission she finally accepts, she doesn't do this the diplomatic way. She uses force and manipulation in order to get her way. It tends to be for a better outcome, however, as she's trying her best to clean up the Earth Kingdom. And that is one of the things that Kyoshi is going to be known for. Now in the year 295 BG, Kyoshi starts to clean up a lot of the groups of criminals all over the Earth Kingdom. She also starts to get rid of the corruption inside the police force. Now after all this, Kyoshi is sent on another important mission to the Fire Nation. She does love the fact that she'll be able to see her friends again, one in particular being Rangi. Now during the event where she gets to meet the Fire Lord, Yoon somehow appears. I have no idea how he got here, but he is, and he assassinates Liu Beifong and attacks a lot of Fire Nation guards. Somehow Yoon became this powerful earthbender. Now as the story progresses, we learn that Kyoshi thinks that Yoon may actually be possessed by the creature. Maybe that's how he's still alive. We also get to note that Kyoshi is being visited by one of her previous lives, Perk of the Water Nation. He keeps visiting her in her dreams, trying his best to tell her something, but just like Korra or Aang, she has no idea how to decipher this information. So after a lot of attempts trying to figure out what Kirk is trying to explain, she finally gets the message. He explains to her something very simple. The creatures cannot possess humans in the physical world, which means that the Yoon she saw is actually the real Yoon. He acted of his own accord. We also learned that the Fire Nation found a lookalike for Yoon and is using a fake Yoon to incite more issues within the Fire Nation. Now with that aside, Kyoshi eventually finds the real Yoon, confronts him and says she is going to stop him. He scruffs and immediately starts to battle with Kyoshi. Kyoshi ends up winning this battle, unaliving Yoon, and this is where Rangi and her hold a small little funeral for him. Now there is something I forgot to cover fully. Perk wasn't the only Avatar state she talked to. She also talked to Yang Chen, the previous airbending Avatar, and all she really does is show Kyoshi important moments from her life to explain why she made certain decisions to help Kyoshi on her path in becoming a better Avatar. This is normally what these other lives do for the current Avatar, as we've seen many times in The Last Airbender, as well as The Legend of Korra. Now that this whole Fire Nation debacle is concluded, everything's at peace now. At this point, Kyoshi is done. She is fed up of corruption and she takes it upon herself to directly combat it. She even establishes a force to swiftly destroy any of the criminal organizations within the Earth Kingdom regions. Sadly, however, the Earth King himself uses this task force as a way to enforce his power to ensure he stays as king. Well, that didn't really sit well with Kyoshi, so she ends up dealing with this. Around this time, Kyoshi is actually summoned by Wang Shi Tong, that giant owl in the library. He simply explains to her it's her duty to help him, and he requires her to retrieve a stolen item for him. This item was stolen by a criminal organization known as the Paper Knives. She does everything needed and retrieves the book for Wang Shi Tong and hands it back to him. Now, at this point in the story, Kyoshi is a master of the Avatar state as well as every single element. She is known to the world as an avatar that is feared and very effective at restoring the order in the world. As I said, she's been rooting out criminal organizations, getting rid of corrupt officials, and ensuring the people themselves have better lives. She also establishes the Kyoshi warriors themselves. She begins to train women in her adopted homeland to defend themselves for 3 reasons in particular. For 1, so they wouldn't be harassed and taken advantage of by men coming into the town. 2, so they can defend themselves from criminal organizations or bandits stealing from this town. And 3, because she needed a force she can trust. Now this is where we get to see what actually happens between her and Qin the Conqueror in the year 270 BG. So essentially, in the Earth Kingdom, the 46th Earth King was very unpopular, and this allowed for the rise of the warlord named Qin. Qin began to gain popularity and amassed an army and went around conquering the Earth Kingdom itself, almost controlling the entire continent until he reached Kyoshi's homeland. And this is where it all stopped. Just like in the Avatar series, she confronts him, battles him, breaks her land or homeland away from the main island, creating Kyoshi Island, and due to this event, Qin falls to his death. Now, she to herself believes she was the one that caused it, regardless of the situation of it being an accident. Qin was just a stubborn guy who had a goal to take over the Earth Kingdom. Would he have been a great king? We have no idea. But we knew at the time the people simply thought so because they clearly did not like the 46th Earth King. And another incident happens right after Qin the Conqueror, where she is summoned to the capital to aid the 46th Earth King because the civilians and peasants have an uprising going on in the city. Kyoshi simply says no. She is not going to stop this uprising as this is an issue due to the old government. Now the Earth King obviously says, "You can't do this, I'm the king," and sends his guards to attack Kyoshi, and we all know how that ended. Kyoshi was standing on top of some unconscious bodies and basically enforced that the king do better for his people, or else. And the Earth King agreed and started to give the people a voice in his ruling. And Kyoshi in turn agreed to protect the culture of Ba Sing Se. And in order to protect the culture of Ba Sing Se and ensure the stability of the nation, she chose to create an elite platoon of earthbenders. I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. She's actually the one who created the Dai Li to keep the peace. Sadly, however, as her time went on, she started to realize the Dai Li became corrupted, which is something that weighed heavily on her heart. Now, after all is said and done, in her later years, Kyoshi was known as the greatest avatar, where Kyoshi has now united most of the nations together. For example, take the Earth Kingdom. Bandits are no longer running rampant, causing uprisings. For the most part, the Earth Kingdom is at peace, and she was looked up to by the younger generation, even the Princess of Ramashu, as someone to idolize and aspire to be. So overall, Kyoshi did a fantastic job as an avatar. She changed the world forever, and she eventually died in 82 BG at the age of 230. Now, obviously, this is probably to her friend sharing some immortality secrets, as we talked about earlier in the video. Now, Kyoshi eventually had a daughter, and her daughter's name was Coco. Coco was actually the one who succeeded her and started to lead the Kyoshi warriors on Kyoshi Island after her death. Now that covers everything about Avatar Kyoshi's life. Everything after now is things we see in the anime or even the live action. And this is where she meets with Aang or the Legend of Korra just to give them advice. But her impact on the world is felt today with the Kyoshi warriors, the stabilization of the Earth Kingdom. Yes, there have been many things that caused the destabilization in the future, but without her building this structure, nothing would have been possible, not even Republic City. And this is why I think Avatar Kyoshi may be the greatest avatar of all time, with Aang being a close second in my opinion. So that's the life and history of Avatar Kyoshi. So my question to you is pretty simple. What do you think about Avatar Kyoshi? Was she awesome? Is she one of your favorite avatars? Do you think she needs her own little movie or series? Because I do. And that wraps it up, and I'll see you all next time.